So another question that's just come in is there sort of a number of actual channels you need in order to be able to have an effective attribution model? Is there a minimum number of channels we need to be marketing?
Well, I'm happy to talk to this because as I mentioned earlier, I kind of build those buckets out. And I think there's some areas where you need to be really careful with the channels you have, and they vary by industry. So for instance, I've worked in hospitality, and actually like Yext and Google Maps and that sort of traffic that's being generated through the mobile phones looking for stores and looking for locations is actually much bigger than traditional retail probably, and some pure online players. So it has to be somewhat specific to your business and understanding where your traffic sources are coming from. But there's certain kind of areas where people trip up, I think. And John, you mentioned there about kind of last click. It scares you sometimes that last click is used as a channel for businesses. It scares when people have things like search not broken out into generic or brand. Yeah. So they're not looking at the different type. And those are completely different types of ratios of customers, different types of behaviors, different cost per acquisition. And when you aggregate those sort of channels, that can be tempting to do, especially for some agencies who might be incentivized in the right way, not you guys, obviously. But they might want to aggregate that data because it makes their CPAs and their costs look better, but it's completely different customers. One is people who know your brand coming to you. One is someone who's in the market for a shirt and doesn't care where they're going, is going to find it on Google. So areas like search have to be broken out. Things for me like paid social should always be broken out, because paid social, usually you've got two functions. You've got acquisition, which is excluding existing customers, and you've got retargeting, which is targeting existing customers or targeting traffic. And again, two very different behaviors. You probably already paid for these guys, and over here you're fighting for every inch in a very competitive space. So I would say you want to be really careful about the number of channels you have. You need to break it down to kind of a level below than you probably have it right now. And what you want to do on top of that is break down every element of that as granular as you can get it without kind of overcomplicating it, right? So that you can always work back up a pivot. You can't work back down, retrospectively. You can't break down data points retrospectively. You have to kind of get there from the start. So that would be kind of my advice.
And if you've got someone who's, particularly if it's being reported back up the scale internally, and all they're looking at is a ROAS or ROI, like if that is all you're basing your performance on, and you're hitting your agency on that model, then they will only ever push towards a conversion tactics and not allow the brand to grow over time. And that's the typical sort of short-sighted promotional, like up and down and up and down. You can only ever pay your way there as opposed to the longer term earn your way over there. With Lens, it is Lens, and you can look at how you split your budget between consideration, awareness consideration, and conversion. But you have to split those out. Otherwise, the agency is only ever going to push into the one way where they're being, sort of driven into, really.
And I would add to that as well with, it's just to sort of try and answer that question about, is there a minimum? I would say no, despite the fact we've just said you need loads of data, but everything that you are tracking and measuring should be in the same place. So I think maybe these types of questions come up because you get platform individual attribution models. So you can get attribution within Google Ads, and that is attributed between just your Google Ads platform's campaigns. But then if you're doing a different attribution model in Facebook and you've got 30-day views and you're doing something completely different, the data's sort of meaningless because you're just siloing different bits of data and tracking them differently. So I wouldn't say there's a minimum, but I would say everything that you can physically track, put it all in one place.